Hello, good crowd. We are really fortunate today. We have with us Mike Jacobs, who is the business strategy leader and chief of staff of corporate social responsibility at IBM. We're going to talk about Watson, AI, IoT, blockchain stuff, all this cool stuff that IBM is doing in the context of changing the world. You don't want to miss this episode.
Welcome to the Your Mark on the World show with your champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
Please support the sponsors who made this episode possible, including Johnson & Johnson's Caring Crowd and GoodCrowd.School. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. Thank you very much for making the time for us. It's very generous of you. Mike, there's so much we could talk about, but let's start with a little conversation about Watson and AI. You know, IBM really has been a leader in AI since forever, right? You're young enough that you probably don't remember a time when IBM wasn't doing AI stuff, and you know, chess was the big deal when you were a kid. And anyway, how is IBM using that technology to make the world better?
So number one, thanks again for having me. Number two, certainly old enough to remember legacy IBM products. My dad wrote his dissertation on an IBM typewriter. I certainly pretended to write everything I could as a young person on IBM machines, and it's a brand I'm thrilled to be associated with. Watson is just one of the latest iterations of that legacy of innovation, and it's being applied to business cases, social cases, and everyday uses across the globe every day. Certainly when it comes to the business environment, Watson and the family of AI and machine learning products that fall under that brand are being used to discover value in new ways for clients that they wouldn't have been able to do with traditional computing methods. In the corporate social responsibility space, which is where I'm most closely associated, we're doing much the same for our partners in social impact to help them figure out what it is that they don't yet know so that they can optimize their services, get a new appreciation for public problems, and figure out the best way to tackle them. I think what's most compelling about what IBM is doing with Watson these days, though, is how we're practicing that innovation in ways that facilitate trust and transparency. There are many companies out there that have AI brands and products these days, and we take a lot of pride in executing our AI business in responsible ways where people understand how it is that we're gathering data, where we're showing people source code and design for individual products. And when the uses for AI, whether they be for business or social impact or both, are understood by the users and by the public so that everybody trusts the outcomes.
Yeah, it's some of the implications of AI, of course, are kind of scary and make people a little nervous. And I think we've long feared the robots taking over since Arnold Schwarzenegger first came to get us back in the 1980s. But the truth is we now face a much more complex landscape where uses as routine and mundane as facial recognition have suddenly exploded on the scene as being controversial. How does IBM address those day-to-day things? And I think it's what you were alluding to, but I wonder if you can think of some specific examples of how you're navigating these difficult waters.
So number one, it starts with the design process. And so it's about who it is that's building these tools and what they're using to build them. So it's about ensuring diversity on the teams building those tools. And at IBM, we take a lot of pride in having diverse teams racially, ethnically, from a gender perspective, and any other social indicator you can think of. Then it's about ensuring diversity in the data sets that you're working with as well. So if you're just taking the data from the too often white IT professional in the Bay Area, you're probably going to end up with some bias in the data. So it's about accounting for what it is that you're measuring. Then, as I was describing before, it's about showing people your work. So in the same way that we were all asked to show our equations in second grade math, now IBM is taking our AI products and showing the world how they're designed, how algorithms are being implemented, executed, and assessed afterwards, and making sure that everyone is on the same page there. And then it's about taking a hard look at the uses of our AI once they've been in place in case there are unforeseen circumstances. And IBM has successfully deployed AI for a number of cases where we've had to tweak what it is that we've been focusing on, and ensure that trust and responsibility throughout. So one specific example that I've been a part of within the IBM corporate social responsibility space was the development of an AI agent. This is a digital agent times 10, the likes of which you might have interacted with when you last spoke to the phone company. We like to think we can do it a little bit better than that. And we assembled one for the United Way to assist their in times of disaster communications with the general public. So this is a digital agent that if people can't get to the phone, need an answer faster than a phone call, or are calling in and getting a busy signal because all their neighbors are calling a 211 hotline that the United Way is managing, they can go on the United Way website, whether from their phone or a computer, and interact with the digital agent there to get answers to their questions. Now, in order to understand what questions people might be asking before they come to that website, we obviously, together with the United Way, had to look at what questions were being asked in previous storms. But we're really careful about how it is that we're analyzing that type of data. So while we took records of what questions were asked, what answers were provided, we anonymized those types of records for things like name, age, location, gender, any other socio-demographic info that the caller might have provided to the operator or the operator might have recorded on their own, so that we know that personal information isn't being introduced to the tool. And so we know right from the get-go that we're focusing on is the data most relevant to the problem at hand and not anything else that could introduce bias.
Yeah, I guess it's if the computer learns from people and the people are biased, it learns bias, right?
That's absolutely right. And people can be biased in ways that they're aware of or that they're not aware of. And people's insights, when taken together, can introduce bias that maybe on an individual level also didn't exist. So we're really careful with how it is that we're designing these tools, how it is that we're building these tools. And we don't walk away from our engagements, whether it's with a commercial client or with a social impact organization like the United Way. We're taking a look at how the tool is being used, making sure it's being used responsibly, and making sure that any data or legacy artifacts are being maintained in a way that are responsible, that don't breach that trust with the user.
Outstanding. You know, IBM is also a leader in blockchain technology, and I often think of that as being a technology that is being deployed by entrepreneurs with strong libertarian biases and Bitcoin portfolios. But I think you found some really impactful ways to use blockchain technology. One I'm aware of was in measuring carbon output, or maybe it was carbon sequestration. In any case, I wonder if you have some examples of your uses of blockchain for good.
Yeah, absolutely. IBM has a really long history of using blockchain for good, including from the way that we've approached the blockchain technology opportunity generally. So IBM was an early contributor to the Hyperledger, which is an open source fabric upon which you can build blockchain applications. So that is a community-driven effort and model, which we like to think has opportunities and applications for good right from the get-go through design. You're right that the IBM blockchain has been used for token-based systems for tracking carbon emissions, and so for creating incentive structures around how carbon is released. The IBM business has a really exciting partnership with Walmart and a number of other big players in the food supply chain to ensure that food is safe right from production all the way through delivery to the consumer. And then squarely within our team on corporate social responsibility, we've had some exciting engagements, including back to the disaster space. We worked with the state of Texas and the One Star Foundation after Hurricane Harvey to prototype how blockchain could be used to track disaster relief payments. We know that there is a lot of complexity in getting dollars from, especially in the American context, a federal provider to a state level distributor, perhaps to a not-for-profit manager, and then to the person who actually needs that money for their home, for food, water, anything else. And so clearly there's a need to track where that money goes. There's a need to make sure that it's going to the right people, and there's a need for transparency. And when you're speaking about those libertarian actors in the cryptocurrency space, they're really interested in it for those managed, transparent types of terms, right? They don't want their personal profile to be out there, but cryptocurrency works because the world sees the ledger. Kind of the same principle here when we're talking about dollars being exchanged within the disaster response space. Obviously, certain players in that world are going to want to know who has had access to the money at what point, but you're going to want to control that type of information, and everybody is going to want to make sure that public dollars are going to the people that need it most.
Yeah, it helps to root out corruption and so many other aspects of ineffective relief when it happens. And my experience is those stories are often, if not exaggerated, they resonate with us, even if they are not representative. And so they tend to have a dampening effect on giving, as well as having a negative effect on the use of funds. So it's really important. So I commend you for that work. As I think about the Internet of Things, I think about smart refrigerators and chuckle to myself a little bit, frankly. And I think about e-scooters all over the world now. It seems like everywhere we go, we have e-scooters. And I'm wondering what the application of Internet of Things are for social impact.
So pretty varied, as they would be for all these different uses. The Internet of Things suite of technologies within IBM has a long history in what we were once referring to as our Smarter Cities programs. So these systems can be the underlying fabric for how a community works, from stoplights to the power supply to the water coming out of our faucets. And so you can think about how those technologies could be used to optimize the delivery of everyday services for sure. And then when we begin to think about the world around us and against stresses that we might be encountering, the Internet of Things has really exciting applications for environmental concerns as well. So you can be creating Internet of Things type networks that link together sensors for the natural world or for patterns that we don't yet know about. So for example, IBM Research has a really exciting long-term project at Lake George in upstate New York. It's together with the Fund for Lake George, a number of universities in the area as well, Rensselaer being one, and it's focused on monitoring the quality of the water of that lake over time and as different environmental conditions get introduced. I'm a New Yorker. I grew up swimming in that lake, fishing in that lake. I'll be canoeing by there at some point soon. And I know it matters to me on a really personal level that it's a safe environment to be recreating in. The IoT system that's in place there is a great example of a world in which really highly advanced technologies are being deployed, oftentimes in a way that's invisible to the person that ultimately is benefiting from their deployment. But the IBM research team, together with those partners that I mentioned, has been doing really advanced science and modeling so that we can better understand how water quality changes happen, how we can predict when they'll happen. So things like recreation, or if there are other uses for the water can be managed effectively as well. And the IoT underpins that whole suite of technologies.
Mike, what are you most proud of having accomplished there during your years at IBM?
I think it's just having been able to integrate myself into a team of really smart, motivated, heart in the right place people. There are many, many people out there in this day and age who are driven by profit, who are driven by ego or celebrity, who are driven by many, many other motivations than what drives me. And what drives me is the opportunity to make a difference and to do so in a way that I respect. And as somebody who came from an organization very different from IBM, I could imagine a world in which I would have stepped into a big tech company and fallen flat on my face. And to be able to work alongside some of the smartest people I've ever met and contribute to their hard work and their innovation is something I'll forever be proud of.
As you think about the lessons you've learned at IBM, what have you taken from the effort to use technology constructively for the community, for the world, and within reasonable ethical guidelines? What do you learn from all that?
I think fundamentally it's about the importance of restless reinvention. And that's a theme that Ginny Rometty, our CEO, comes back to all the time. The IBM company has successfully reinvented itself from those typewriters that I was speaking about and other workplace products long before that to a cloud and AI company with further innovation to come. And we have needed to reinvent how it is that we bring change to the world. We've needed to reinvent ourselves. And because there have been those drastic changes, and because we've so often been at the tip of the spear of technical innovation, we've needed to be open, to be transparent with our technologies, with ourselves. And so for me, the lessons have been not just about the importance of focusing on social impact, but doing so in a way where you are co-creating those opportunities with your stakeholders, where the world understands why it is that you're working in the ways that you're working, and where you're creating opportunities for others to come in and partner in an open ecosystem for social impact.
I'm intrigued, Mike, by your bio and what you've talked about and what you've said. It's clear to me that you are passionate about doing good. And I often ask my guests why they are so passionate about doing good, because so many of them are. But with you, I'm more intrigued because I see how growing up on the river and on the water, that you grew a genuine connection to Earth and to the environment, and you called yourself an environmentalist at a young age. What was it that drew you to technology as a way to manifest your environmentalism?
To my mind, technology provides infinite opportunities to maximize your impact. So at IBM and on our corporate social responsibility team, we really focus in on 3 tenets of how we're trying to bring change to the world. One of them is user centricity. So really putting at the focus of all of our efforts who it is that we're trying to deliver change for. One of them is about that co-creation piece. How do we partner with others so that we bring in the best of what everyone has to offer to maximize our input? And the third is scale. We know that the world can't wait for the types of changes that we're talking about executing. And while those first 2 are critical techniques for the design, development, and deployment of technologies, I think that scale on the level that the world needs for environmental interventions, for social interventions, for health interventions, really can only be achieved with technology. We need people and leaders and communities to be engaged, and that will continue to be an effort, but to ramp up the pace at which those folks are able to reach other members of our global community who need help the most, and to make the types of drastic changes that the world so desperately needs, we need technology.
Mike, what is your superpower?
Oh man, it seems to be ending up in the right place at the right time, like being here with you and having this conversation, which has been an awesome opportunity and experience in of itself, and just being fortunate enough to end up at a place like IBM and with the chances that I have here to do the work we've talked about.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Mike, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with us today. It's been just such a great discussion. But I know our guests are going to want to know so much more. We just barely scratched the surface of the technology you're deploying at IBM for doing good. Can you tell people how they can learn more about your corporate social responsibility initiatives and how they can connect with you personally?
IBM.org. We've just launched a new platform as a single-stop shop to find out about our work, our corporate responsibility report, our environmental affairs report. All of that is there, as well as some interactive content to truly learn. If you're a social impact organization, there's a platform there to bring volunteering opportunities that you have for your portfolio and needs to IBM to go to our community of highly motivated employees and retirees. Same for donations as well. So for the IBM enterprise around social impact, IBM.org, IBM.org, IBM.org. And for me personally, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm super accessible. I love to meet new people. I have a life outside of IBM.org as well. And so I want to get to know your listeners and the work that they're doing. Folks should feel free to reach out to me there.
Fantastic. Mike, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. And we wish you every success in deploying IBM's technology to make the world a better place.
Thanks so much. We'll see you out there.
All righty. Let's do some good.
At Caring Crowd, we believe everyone has the power to make a difference. Through our crowdfunding platform for community health, we empower passionate people to drive real change. Whether you work for a nonprofit organization, volunteer, or want to get involved for the first time, you can post a campaign on Caring Crowd. Join us, because caring is where change begins.
At goodcrowd.school, 5% of what you pay to learn how to make a difference goes to nonprofits working to eradicate extreme poverty, improve global health, and reverse climate change by 2045. So when you take a course to learn how to change the world, you do change the world. Get started at goodcrowd.school today. Thanks for tuning in to the Your Mark on the World show, the Social Impact Podcast. Please subscribe via YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or Spotify.